So if you're watching this video, you've at least considered the idea of devoting some time and effort to preparing for a hike in order to avoid getting injured and to enjoy the trip as much as possible. So in this video, I want to share what I've learned over the years helping hikers prepare for their trips. Throughout the video, I'll be referring to other videos on my channel that will help you get started and gauge where you're at. And I'll also be referencing the programs from my website that are relevant to each situation. But before we get into it, I want to plug one thing, and that is my Patreon page. I've just posted a video there detailing my next Thru hike, the new equipment that I have, as well as my lighter pack page, which has got all the information on the new gear that I'm taking on my next Thru hike. All right, let's get into it. So this video is broken down into 4 things: time, resources, injuries, and experience. And the first one that we're going to get into is time, both in terms of how much time you have available in your day-to-day life for training, but also how much time you have before day 0 when you're at the trailhead and ready to go. The more time you have before your trip, the more time you have to explore your body, to find your weaknesses, and hopefully to eliminate any chance of you getting injured beforehand. So for anyone that has, say, more than 2 months to prepare, I would recommend that your primary focus be on joint health, so strength and mobility. Improving the mobility and overall health of key joints like knees, hips, and ankles can take a lot of time. You can't get this done in 2 or 3 weeks. So the longer you have, the better. Like anything worthwhile, it does take a bit of effort. It does take a little bit of trial and error, but it's 100% time well spent. The cardio side of things is obviously important, but we're going to get into that later. Working on strength and mobility requires that you have a bit of an interest in your own body, and this knowledge can be really useful when you're out on the trail if things start to go wrong. So the training is about exploring the limitations that you may have with those key joints and making improvements in the areas that are the highest priority. So again, knees, hips, and ankles. This can be done in as little as 20 minutes a day by following this routine. This is designed with the hiker in mind, and it's designed to help you understand your body and start figuring out where your limitations are. It's really the best place to start. And no matter where you're at, I think this is a really good first point of call for just about anyone. But if you have less than 2 months to prepare, I would still recommend doing that video, but it just means you've probably got to put a lot more time in. And with that time, I would suggest you begin working on your aerobic function, or for lack of a better word, cardio. That's a big topic, and I go into quite a bit of detail on exactly how to do that in this video. I'll link it up here so you can check it out. So just those 2 videos alone really cover the basics in terms of how to prevent getting injured, and also how to develop your aerobic capacity so you're not huffing and puffing your way up the mountain every single day. If you wanted a plan laid out for you with exactly what to do, I would recommend checking out my Elements program. For as little as $10, we cover all that and more, including lower body and upper body strength, which is surprisingly important. So that's where I recommend everyone start, no matter what. Even if you're a professional athlete, if you go through that program, I guarantee you there's going to be a weakness in there, something you can discover that's going to help your overall performance and enjoyment when you're out in the mountains. The only caveat to that would be that if you're a really young person, say 21 or under, and if you've been constantly active, you've never had any injury concerns, then you could kind of skip the queue and jump straight into something like my uphill endurance program. But my advice is to not take shortcuts. So the second time factor that we have to consider is how much time you have in your day-to-day life to be able to devote to training. Some people have hours and hours, and if you're busy, if you've got a family, maybe you've only got half an hour, maximum 45 minutes. But no matter what, there's something that you can do that's going to push the envelope in terms of how prepared you are. Most of my programs require about 30 to 60 minutes per day, depending on which phase you're at. But if you're really short on time, then you really have to choose to prioritize either strength and mobility or aerobic function. It's better to do one really well than to do both poorly. So if you're short on time, whether it's throughout your week or in the lead up to your trip, it's best to focus on one and do it well. But obviously with more time to devote to training, the more you're going to be able to thoroughly cover those bases of strength and mobility and aerobic function to give you the best possible result. So now that we've talked about time, the second category of things to consider is going to be resources. So if you live close by to trails that have some elevation, or even if you live in a city that's got some hills nearby, it's going to make things a lot easier. Obviously it helps having mountains nearby, but we can't all live in Chamonix. So even if you live in a region that's pancake flat without a hill in sight, there's definitely things you can do. You just have to be a little bit more creative about the way you structure your training and what you do in those sessions. And those sessions can be useful to anyone because it's quite likely that even if you have mountains close by, you won't have the time to go out there 3 to 4 times a week. And that's where simulated elevation comes in handy. I'm not talking about simulated altitude. I'm not really a fan of altitude training. I've covered that in another video. What I'm talking about is things like stairs, steps, incline treadmills, potentially other types of gym equipment, but really only as a last resort. If you've watched the channel for a while, you probably know how I feel about fixed gym equipment already, so we can skip over that as well. But in any case, the single best resource that you have is just your own body. There is so much that you can do that can be really effective only using your own body weight and a little bit of space on the floor. And the great benefit of this is that you can do it anywhere. You can even do it in the mountains if you so wish. And if you want to check out this video, I'll show you exactly how to do that. But I design all of my workouts to either be done at home or out in nature or a park, because that's the way that I enjoy training. I don't enjoy being in the gyms, and the more you enjoy the training, the more likely you are to do it. So with the right exercises and a basic understanding of how the body works, you can really challenge yourself and build some serious strength and endurance in the process. So if all you have is a step or a box out in a park somewhere, then you can try this follow along workout, which is all about developing leg strength. What you may discover though when doing this type of training is that training your own body weight with no equipment does come with its own challenges. If you have been limited in your mobility, if your joints and muscles are stiff and sore and achy, then things are going to be a little bit harder for you. And again, that's why I developed the Elements program. That was really designed with my 60-year-old mother in mind. She can go through and do these exercises, and so really anyone with any level of fitness can begin with that program. So if you find my other follow along routines too difficult, then Elements is really the place to begin. So no matter what resources you have, whether you've got mountains in your backyard or hills, stairs, steps, or just your own body weight and a bit of space, then you can make the most of your time and your resources by using the videos on my channel and the videos in my programs if you want to go in that direction. So the third thing to consider, I think, is your experience level. So how much time you've actually been out on trail. If you've been hiking regularly and extensively and you consider yourself a reasonably experienced hiker, then frankly, it's a miracle that you're still watching this video because what often comes with that experience is confidence, which, don't get me wrong, confidence is great. But with experience and confidence often comes the notion that your body is bulletproof and is capable of anything simply because of the miles that you've put in on trail, which unfortunately is not the case. I wish it was. Our joints will wear out if we don't give them that daily time and attention. So if hiking is your only form of movement that your body does, then you are gradually losing the range of motion that you have. And we've all experienced this. After a long day's hiking, you're immediately a lot tighter and a lot stiffer than what you were. And the same thing happens over the long term. I mean, yes, that tightness and soreness eventually goes away, but we don't automatically gain more range of motion if we're not doing anything other than just walking. Most of us are also gradually losing mobility as we age. And when you couple that with limited range of motion, repetitive movements, consistent use over days, weeks, or months, then that's really a recipe for injury. So if you are an experienced hiker and you're looking to devote some more time to training, then my advice would be this. If you want to spend more time doing strength and mobility, that's going to give you the biggest bang for buck in terms of both preventing injury, but also dealing with the stress of being on trail for long periods of time. Yes, you can also work on your fitness in general and things like cardio, especially if you wanted to hike faster, for instance, but hiking for the most part is not a performance pursuit. It's mainly about not getting injured so you can continue to go for longer and longer. Speaking of injuries, that is the fourth thing we're going to talk about this video. I'm going to break them down, talk about some of the more common injuries and how you can avoid them. And I'll be focusing just on musculoskeletal injuries for this video. And they come in really two categories. So firstly, there's trauma. So that's hard impact, like a bad fall, or jerking movements, fractures, dislocations, direct blows to muscle, Obviously, there's certain circumstances where things like this are avoidable. Being strong and mobile is not going to help you from falling off a 20-meter cliff. But in the vast majority of cases, being strong and mobile will greatly reduce your chances of getting an injury. You know, accidents happen even to those with a lot of experience, and it only takes your knee or your ankle to move slightly out of its normal alignment for something to get torn or sprained or ruptured in some kind of trauma. I made a video with some basic stretches and some sitting patterns that you can use both in prevention of injuries in your training, and also if something was to come up on trail, you can utilize that information as well. So that one's also a must see. I'll link it up here. And then there's movement capacity injuries that are generally produced by muscle imbalances, postural strain, repetitive movements, lack of mobility. These are the common injuries that I'm generally dealing with. Some of the most common ones are to do with the feet. The feet are so important to us as hikers. Things like plantar fasciitis or rolled or strained ankles. A lot of injuries like these and others with the foot can be prevented by doing my ankle mobility and my ankle strength routine. They're all in my injury playlist. As we move up the leg, things like shin splints and other things to do with the tibialis, any kind of strain on the front of the leg or the calf, can be prevented by just doing some general strength and conditioning of both the calf muscles and the tibialis anterior, the muscle that runs down the front of the leg. Moving up, then we've got knees, and of course there's loads of different knee issues. One of the most common ones is valgus knee, so weakness on the outside of the hip, which causes the knee to cave inwards. So if you notice that your knees are often caving inwards towards the midline of the body when you're either walking or running, it's probably got something to do with the outer glute. And funnily enough, a lot of these other knee issues come from either problems with ankle mobility or problems with hip strength and mobility. So if you're working on the daily movement practice and improving your strength and mobility, both of the ankles and the hips, then the likelihood is that you're going to be making some progress towards preventing those injuries. If you have a knee issue and you want to dive into that a little bit more, I've got a couple of videos about how to reduce knee pain when you're hiking, as well as one specific to iliotibial band pain, which is something that's really far too common and from my mind so far is relatively easy to fix. There's a bunch of people that have commented on that video that have said that has helped from doing that routine, and it's all free and you can find it on my channel. I'll link it up here for you to check out. The thing with hiking is that it's a simple movement pattern and it uses only a fraction of the range of motion of key joints like knees, hips, and ankles, and it does that over and over and over again in a very repetitive way. So the answer to preventing those kind of injuries that come with overuse and lack of mobility is to include more movement complexity in your everyday life. If you hike a lot and do nothing else, then your body is going to thrive from doing something different and getting some more stimulus. This should feel good, it should give you energy, it should boost vitality, because movement complexity is the antithesis, it's the yang to the yin of hiking. But the point here is that if you look after your joints, if you challenge their range of motion regularly and build a habit around more complex movements, then the likelihood is that you won't have to worry so much about training and being prepared for a hike. So I realize this video has basically just been a gigantic map to lead you to other videos, but I really need to get out my kind of mind map in a form of video for you to understand how all these puzzle pieces fit together with my programs and my videos. If you enjoyed this video, I'd love to do more stuff like this in the future. Hit the like button to let me know and subscribe because I've got lots more gold coming for you soon. Thanks for watching. I'll see you on the summit.